Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the viewing window of the transport ship and watched the Galactic Concorde's capital station grow larger against the stars. It was beautiful. The station stretched across thousands of kilometers, a spinning wheel of light and metal that housed representatives from over 300 species. This was the heart of galactic civilization. This was where humanity would take its first steps into a larger universe. She touched the pendant around her neck. It was a simple thing, a small blue marble that represented Earth. Her grandmother had given it to her when she was a child and told her to always remember where she came from. Now she carried it to the stars. "Ambassador, we will dock in 15 minutes," her aide Marcus said from behind her. Elena nodded without turning around. "Are the gifts prepared?" "Everything is ready. The medical data, the agricultural research, the cultural archives, everything humanity wants to share." She smiled at her reflection in the window. Humanity had debated for years about how to approach first contact. Some wanted to show strength. Others wanted to hide their true capabilities. But in the end, they had chosen a different path. They would come with open hands. They would offer everything they had learned in their short journey through the stars. They would prove that humanity could be trusted. The transport ship entered the docking bay and settled onto the landing platform. Elena straightened her formal uniform and checked her appearance one final time. She was 53 years old with gray streaks in her dark hair. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, first as a diplomat on Earth, then as humanity's representative to the three species they had encountered in their local region of space. Now she would speak for all of humanity before the entire galaxy. The airlock opened and she stepped onto the station. A delegation was waiting for her. There were creatures of every shape and size. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others floated through the air or crawled on many limbs. Elena had studied images and recordings of these species, but seeing them in person took her breath away. The galaxy was so much larger and stranger than she had imagined. At the front of the delegation stood a tall figure with pale blue skin and silver eyes. This was High Executor Vorath of the Valoran. The Valoran were the dominant species in the Galactic Concorde. They had built this station. They had written the laws that governed interstellar civilization. They considered themselves the rightful rulers of the galaxy. Elena bowed her head in the greeting she had been taught. "High Executor Vorath, I am honored to stand before you. I bring greetings from Earth and from all of humanity." Vorath looked down at her. The Valoran were nearly 3 meters tall, and he seemed to enjoy the fact that Elena had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. "You are the human ambassador," he said. His voice was cold and flat. "You have come to petition for membership in the Concorde." "I have come to offer friendship," Elena said. "Humanity has much to share and much to learn. We believe that all species can benefit from cooperation and understanding." Vorath's silver eyes narrowed slightly. "You believe you have something to offer the Concorde? Your species has only traveled among the stars for 200 years. You are infants, children playing with toys you do not understand." Elena kept her smile in place even though his words stung. "Every species was young once, High Executor, even the Valoran. We simply ask for the chance to grow alongside our galactic neighbors." The delegation led her through the station toward the Grand Assembly Hall. Elena walked with her head held high, greeting every species they passed with the appropriate gesture of respect. She had spent months memorizing these customs. A slight bow for the Krethian, a raised palm for the Orvani, a closed fist over the heart for the Meloxi. Each species had their own traditions, and Elena honored them all. The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest enclosed space Elena had ever seen. It was a vast dome filled with platforms and galleries where representatives from every member species could observe the proceedings. Today, those galleries were packed. Word had spread that the humans were coming. Everyone wanted to see the new species that had emerged from the outer edges of the galaxy. Elena walked to the center of the hall and stood on the speaker's platform. She was surrounded by hundreds of thousands of watching eyes. Some looked curious, some looked skeptical, some looked openly hostile, but Elena refused to let her fear show. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Concorde," she began, "I come before you as a messenger of peace and friendship. Humanity is a young species. We have made many mistakes in our short history. We have warred among ourselves. We have damaged our own world. We have often failed to live up to our highest ideals. She paused and looked around the vast chamber. But we have also learned from those mistakes. We have learned that cooperation is stronger than competition. We have learned that compassion is more powerful than cruelty. We have learned that the only way forward is together. She gestured to her aides, who began displaying holographic images of Earth's gifts, medical research that could cure diseases affecting dozens of species, agricultural techniques that could help feed hungry worlds, energy systems that could bring power to developing civilizations, cultural treasures that revealed the beauty and creativity of the human spirit. We do not come empty-handed, Elena said. We offer these gifts freely to any species that wishes to receive them. We ask nothing in return except the opportunity to learn and grow alongside you. The chamber was silent for a moment. Then whispers began spreading through the galleries. Elena could not understand most of what was being said, but the tone seemed surprised, perhaps even impressed. Then High Executor Vorath rose from his seat on the central platform. You speak of gifts, he said loudly. But what is the true purpose of these offerings? Do you think you can buy your way into the Concord? Do you think you can bribe us into accepting you as equals? Elena shook her head. These are not bribes, High Executor. They are simply what we have to share. Humanity believes that knowledge should be free, that healing should be available to all, that no species should suffer when we have the means to help. Pretty words, Vora said, but I see through your deception. You humans are clever. You pretend to be peaceful while hiding your true intentions. You pretend to be weak while concealing your strength. Elena frowned. I am not pretending anything, High Executor. I have come here in good faith. Humanity desires only friendship. Varath descended from his platform and walked toward her. The chamber fell completely silent. Every eye watched as the tall Valoran approached the small human. You have insulted the conquered, Varath said quietly. You have insulted the Valoran. Elena's heart began to race. I do not understand. How have I given offense? You stood before the High Executor without lowering your eyes. Among my people, this is a challenge, a declaration that you consider yourself my equal or my superior. Elena's blood went cold. She had studied Valoran customs extensively. She knew that eye contact was important in their culture. But her research had indicated that direct eye contact was a sign of respect, not insult. Had she been given false information, or had Vorath simply invented an excuse? High Executor, I apologize, she said quickly. Any offense was unintentional. I meant only respect. Your intentions do not matter, Vorath said. Only your actions. And your actions have consequences. He turned to the assembled representatives. The human has committed a grave insult against the Valoran and against the Concord. The punishment for such an insult is death. Elena's aides rushed forward, but Valoran guards blocked their path. Marcus shouted her name. The galleries erupted in confused noise. Some species protested. Others remained silent. A few even called out in support of Vorath's judgment. Please, Elena said, there must be some way to make amends, some way to resolve this peacefully. Vorath looked down at her with cold silver eyes. There is no peace for those who insult the Valoran. He gestured to his guards. Elena did not run. She did not beg. She stood tall and straight as the guards approached her. She thought of Earth, of the billions of people who had placed their hopes in her. She thought of her grandmother and the little blue marble that represented everything she loved. Tell my people, she said quietly, that I came here in peace. Tell them not to answer hatred with hatred. Tell them to be better than this. The execution was swift. One moment, Elena Vasquez was standing on the speaker's platform, ambassador of humanity, messenger of peace. The next moment, she was gone. The chamber was silent. The representatives of 300 species had witnessed the murder of an ambassador who had come bearing gifts. Some looked away in shame. Others stared in shock. A few of the Valoran representatives applauded. High Executor Vorath returned to his platform. Let this be a lesson to all lesser species, he announced. The Concord is not a charity. The Valoran are not your friends. Know your place or suffer the consequences. Far away on a small blue planet, orbiting an ordinary yellow star, the transmission of the execution was received. Military commanders and civilian leaders gathered in silence to watch. They saw their ambassador murdered. They saw her body collapse on the speaker's platform. They heard Vorath's words about lesser species and knowing their place. No one spoke. No one moved. Then one by one, every screen showing the transmission went dark. The lights in the room flickered. The stars visible through the windows seemed to dim. Something had changed in humanity, something deep and fundamental, something that the galaxy would come to understand in time. The sky itself seemed to grow darker, and on the Concorde station, surrounded by his supporters and admirers, High Executive Vorath smiled and congratulated himself on teaching the humans their place. He had no idea what he had just awakened. The first reports came from the Kessian trade routes. A merchant convoy traveling through the outer sectors noticed that the stars looked different, dimmer somehow. The navigators checked their instruments and found nothing wrong. But when they looked out the windows, they could see it with their own eyes. The stars were fading. The convoy captain reported the anomaly to Concorde authorities, who dismissed it as equipment malfunction or crew fatigue. Strange things happened in deep space. Experienced travelers knew that the mind could play tricks on you when you were surrounded by endless darkness. But the reports kept coming. A Valoran patrol fleet encountered a region of space where their sensors simply stopped working. They could see the stars with their eyes, but every electronic system insisted there was nothing there. No stars, no planets, no radiation, just empty void. The fleet commander ordered a retreat and filed a classified report that was immediately buried by his superiors. An Orvani science vessel investigating a nebula found that their communications had been cut off. They could send messages, but no one responded. They could receive transmissions from across the galaxy, but nothing could reach them. After 3 days of isolation, their communications suddenly returned to normal. The crew reported that they felt like they had been watched the entire time. Something huge had been out there in the darkness, observing them, waiting. The strangest reports came from the sectors closest to human space. Ships that entered those regions experienced time anomalies. They would jump into a system expecting a journey of hours and emerge days later with no memory of what had happened. Their computers showed normal flight logs, but their bodies told a different story. They were hungry. They were tired. They had aged. Some ships never emerged at all. High Executor Vorath received these reports and dismissed them with a wave of his long blue fingers. Coincidences, he said to his advisors. Technical failures. The humans are primitives. They cannot be responsible for these events. With respect, High Executor, one advisor said carefully, the anomalies began immediately after the execution of the human ambassador. The timing suggests a connection. Vorath's silver eyes narrowed dangerously. Are you suggesting that we should fear these creatures? They have barely mastered faster-than-light travel. They have been in space for 200 years. The Valoran have ruled this galaxy for 20,000 years. What could humans possibly do to threaten us? The advisor lowered his eyes and said nothing more. Vorath turned to the window of his private chamber and looked out at the stars. Even here, at the heart of the Concorde station, the stars seemed slightly dimmer than he remembered. But that was impossible. It was just his imagination. Weeks passed. The anomalies continued. A Crethean colony world reported that their sun had flickered. Not like a normal solar flare, but a deliberate pattern, like a heartbeat slowing down. The colonists watched in terror as their sun dimmed by 5%, then 10%, then 20%. Temperatures dropped. Crops began dying. The colonists sent desperate messages begging for evacuation. Then just as suddenly as it began, the flickering stopped. The sun returned to normal, but the message was clear. Something out there had the power to touch stars. The Valoran Council of Seven demanded answers. They summoned their greatest scientists and ordered them to explain what was happening. The scientists examined the data from across the galaxy and reached a terrifying conclusion. The anomalies are not natural phenomena, the lead scientist reported. They are artificial. Someone is manipulating space-time on a scale we cannot comprehend. Someone is dimming stars and folding space and disrupting communications. And based on the pattern of the anomalies, we believe we know who. The humans, one council member said. Impossible, Vorath interrupted. Humans do not have this capability. Our intelligence indicates that their technology is at least 5 centuries behind our own. The scientist hesitated before speaking. High Executor, our intelligence may have been wrong, or it may have been deliberately misleading. The humans may have hidden their true capabilities from us. Why would they do that? Because they were afraid, the scientist said. They had observed the conquered. They had seen how the Valoran treat species they consider threats. Perhaps they decided that appearing weak was safer than appearing strong. Vorath was silent for a long moment. His silver eyes stared at nothing as he processed this information. Finally, he spoke. Even if this is true, it changes nothing. The humans have not attacked us. They have not made any demands. They have simply gone silent. Perhaps silence is their weapon, another council member suggested. Perhaps they want us to wonder, to fear, to imagine what they might do. The Valoran do not fear, Vorath said coldly. We dominate. That is our nature and our right. But even as he spoke, he could not quite meet anyone's eyes. Far from the Concord station, a small Malaxi exploration ship drifted through an uncharted region of space. The crew had been sent to investigate the anomalies at their source. They were scientists and explorers, not soldiers. Their ship carried no weapons. They came only to learn. They found what they were looking for near a dim red star at the edge of human territory. At first, the captain thought there was something wrong with her eyes. She blinked and rubbed them and looked again. The image did not change. The red star was surrounded by a shell, a massive artificial structure that encircled the entire star like a cage. Millions of individual collectors harvested the star's energy, gathering power on a scale that defied imagination. And this was just one star. Based on the sensor data, the captain realized that the humans had built similar structures around dozens of stars in this region, perhaps hundreds. A Dyson swarm, the ship's engineer whispered in awe. They built a Dyson swarm. This is technology that should take millions of years to develop. How is this possible? The captain shook her head slowly. They were not behind us. They were never behind us. They were so far ahead that they were pretending to be primitive. Why? The engineer asked. Why would they hide this? Because they wanted peace, the captain said. They came to the Concord with gifts and open hands. They wanted to be friends. And we killed their ambassador. The ship's communications officer interrupted. Captain, I am receiving a transmission. It is coming from the structure. Play it. The voice that filled the ship was human. It spoke in the common galactic language, but with an accent that sounded like Earth. Melisy vessel, you have entered human space. You are not in danger. We do not harm those who come in peace, but we ask that you deliver a message to the Galactic Concord. The captain's hearts were pounding. We are listening. Tell them that humanity is mourning. Tell them that we are grief-stricken by what was done to our ambassador. Tell them that we have not attacked because we are not yet certain how to respond. Elena Vasquez believed in peace. She believed that all species could learn to be better. We are trying to honor her memory by giving the galaxy time to reconsider its actions. The transmission paused. When it continued, the voice was heavier, sadder. But tell them also that our patience is not infinite. Tell them that the darkness they have seen is just our sorrow made visible. Tell them that if sorrow turns to anger, the darkness will be nothing compared to what follows. The transmission ended. The Malaxi ship hung in space before the massive structure that humanity had built in secret. The captain stared at it for a long time. Then she ordered her crew to return to Concord space with the message. When the Malaxi report reached the Valoran Council, Vorath dismissed it as propaganda. The humans are trying to frighten us, he said. They are playing games. They hope that we will back down without a fight. Perhaps we should consider negotiations, one council member suggested. If the humans truly have this capability, then attacking them would be suicide. The Valoran do not negotiate with lesser species, Vorath said. We do not show weakness. If the humans want war, we will give them war. We will gather the full military might of the conquered, and we will crush them before they can strike. High Executor, please reconsider. The evidence suggests that humanity could destroy us without effort. Vorath rose from his seat and stared down at the council member who had spoken. I will not be remembered as the leader who cowered before primitives. I will not shame the Valoran by showing fear. We will attack. We will win. And we will prove once and for all that the Valoran are the masters of this galaxy." He turned and walked out of the council chamber. Behind him, the other council members exchanged worried looks, but none of them dared to oppose him openly. The Valoran did not tolerate dissent, and so the order was given. The war fleet of the Galactic Concord would gather at the edge of human space. They would launch a preemptive strike against the human homeworld. They would destroy Earth and all its colonies before the humans could use their hidden technology against the Concord. As the fleet assembled, the stars continued to dim. The darkness spread slowly but steadily across the galaxy. It was not a weapon. It was not a threat. It was simply the visible expression of humanity's grief. The sky was crying, and the Valoran, in their arrogance, mistook those tears for weakness. They would learn the truth soon enough. 3 months had passed since the execution of Ambassador Elena Vasquez. 3 months of silence from Earth. 3 months of growing darkness across the galaxy, and 3 months of waiting for something that no one could quite define. The Galactic Concord had sent 17 diplomatic missions to human space during that time. Not one had returned with a response. Some ships came back with their crews changed. The diplomats who entered human space as proud representatives of their species emerged as quiet, thoughtful beings who refused to discuss what they had seen. They resigned from their positions. They returned to their homeworlds. They spent their days staring at the stars with expressions that mixed wonder and sorrow. Others chose not to return at all. They sent brief messages to their families explaining that they had decided to stay among the humans. They did not explain why. They simply said that they had found something worth staying for. This terrified the Valoran more than any weapon could have. High Executor Vorath paced the floor of his command center aboard the flagship of the Concord War Fleet. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of over 10,000 warships gathered at the border of human space. This was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. Enough soldiers to conquer 1,000 species. And yet Vorath could not shake the cold feeling in his chest. "Report," he commanded. His tactical officer responded immediately. "All ships are in position, High Executor. We are ready to jump into human space on your command." "And the humans? Any response to our presence?" "None, High Executor. No communications. No movement of their ships. Our sensors detect nothing unusual." That was what worried Vorath. The humans knew the fleet was here. They had to know. Their technology, if the reports were accurate, could detect a single ship from across the galaxy. Yet they had done nothing. They had said nothing. They simply waited in silence. Vorath turned to his communications officer. "Send one final message to Earth. Tell them that this is their last chance to surrender. Tell them that if they refuse, we will destroy their homeworld and every colony they have ever established." The message was sent. Minutes passed, then hours. No response came. "They are either very brave or very foolish," Vorath muttered to himself. His advisor approached cautiously. "High Executor, may I speak freely?" Vorath nodded. "What if they are neither? What if they are simply waiting for us to make the first move?" The Malaxi report suggested that the humans are still deciding how to respond to the ambassador's death. What if our attack is what they are waiting for? What if they want us to strike first so that their response will be justified? Vorath considered this. "You suggest that we are playing into their hands?" "I suggest that we do not fully understand what we are dealing with. The darkness that has spread across the galaxy is proof of power beyond our comprehension. Attacking the humans may be exactly what they want us to do. And what would you have me do instead? Retreat? Apologize? The Valoran do not apologize. We do not show weakness. Perhaps this is a situation where strength looks different than we expect," the advisor said carefully. "Perhaps true strength is knowing when not to fight." Vorath stared at his advisor for a long moment. Then he turned away. "The fleet will advance. Give the order." The advisor lowered his eyes and said nothing more. 10,000 ships activated their jump drives and vanished into the void between stars. They emerged seconds later in the first human system, a small colony world orbiting a yellow star similar to Earth's sun. What they found there made even Vorath's blood run cold. The colony world was unchanged. Its cities still glowed with lights. Its orbital stations still hummed with activity. But between the Concorde fleet and that peaceful world stood a wall of human ships. Not hundreds, not thousands, not even tens of thousands. The human fleet stretched beyond the range of Valoran sensors. Ships of every size filled the space between stars like a solid barrier. Some were small and fast, designed for quick strikes. Others were massive beyond anything the Valoran had ever built. And among them floated structures that defied classification. Spheres that pulsed with energy. Rings that crackled with lightning. Cubes that seemed to absorb light itself. Varath stared at the display showing this impossible fleet and felt something he had never felt before in his long life. Fear. How many? He asked quietly. His tactical officer's voice trembled. We cannot count them, High Executor. Our sensors cannot reach the end of their formation. Estimates suggest at least 1 million vessels, possibly more. 1 million ships. The entire Concorde fleet was 10,000. They were outnumbered 100 to 1. And based on the energy readings from those strange structures, the human ships were individually more powerful as well. This is impossible, Vorath said. They could not have built this fleet in 3 months. They did not, High Executor. The voice came from the communications console. A human voice. We built it over 300 years, while we pretended to be primitives, while we sent ambassadors with gifts and hope for friendship. We built this fleet because we knew that someday, some species would try to destroy us. We just never thought it would happen so soon. Vorath straightened his spine and tried to project confidence he did not feel. You are outnumbered in experience, he said. The Valoran have fought 1,000 wars. Your species is untested in battle. We are not untested, the human voice replied. We have simply never chosen to fight. There is a difference. Then fight now. Let us see if your technology can match Valoran courage. There was a long pause before the human responded. High Executor Vorath, humanity does not want this war. We did not come to this region of space seeking conquest. We came seeking friendship. Your species murdered the best of us. You killed Elena Vasquez in front of the entire galaxy. And still, we have not attacked. Still, we wait. Do you understand what that means? Vorath did not answer. It means that we are trying to decide whether your species deserves to exist. It means that we are debating among ourselves whether to destroy the Valoran completely or to give you another chance. It means that the only thing standing between your people and extinction is the memory of a woman who believed in mercy. The words hit Vorath like physical blows. He had expected threats. He had expected demands for surrender. He had not expected this quiet statement of absolute power combined with genuine uncertainty about whether to use it. What do you want? He asked finally. We want to know if you can be better, the human voice said. We want to know if the species that murdered our ambassador can learn from that crime. We want to know if there is anything worth saving in the Valoran. And if we cannot satisfy you, then the darkness you have seen will become permanent. Your stars will go out one by one. Your worlds will freeze. Your people will fade into memory. And the galaxy will forget that the Valoran ever existed. Vorath looked at the wall of ships before him. He looked at the impossible technology. He looked at the quiet power that humanity had revealed. And he made a decision. All ships, fire at will. The Concorde fleet launched everything it had. Missiles and energy beams and kinetic projectiles streaked toward the human formation. It was the most powerful attack in galactic history. The human ships did not fire back. Instead, shields flared to life around their vessels. The Concorde weapons splashed against those shields and vanished without effect. Not deflected, not absorbed, simply erased from existence. Impossible, Vorath whispered. The human fleet began to move, not attacking, just advancing. Slowly and steadily, they pushed the Concorde fleet backward. Any ship that tried to hold position found itself gently but irresistibly shoved aside. Any ship that tried to flee found its path blocked. The humans were hurting them, treating the most powerful war fleet in galactic history like animals being guided into a pen, and through it all, they never fired a single shot. Vorath watched his fleet being corralled and felt his understanding of the universe crumbling. The Valoran had always believed that power meant the ability to destroy. That strength was measured in how many enemies you could kill. But the humans were showing him a different kind of power. The power to control without killing. The power to dominate without destruction. It was more terrifying than any weapon. "What happens now?" he asked the empty air, knowing the humans could hear. "Now," the human voice replied, "you wait. You wait for humanity to finish mourning. You wait for us to decide what justice means. And you pray that we choose mercy." The Concorde fleet drifted in the grip of human power, surrounded, helpless, alive. The waiting began. The Concorde fleet had been held in place for 7 days without communication, 7 days without understanding what would happen next, 7 days of watching human ships patrol around them like shepherds guarding a flock of dangerous animals. High Executor Vorath had not slept. He stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the impossible wall of ships that surrounded his fleet. His officers moved quietly around him, afraid to speak. The proud Valoran warriors who had boasted of destroying humanity now sat in silence, contemplating their own helplessness. On the 7th day, something changed. A single human vessel broke formation and approached the Valoran flagship. It was small compared to the massive warships that filled the space around them. A simple transport ship, no larger than a Valoran shuttle. It moved slowly and deliberately, giving the Concorde fleet plenty of time to observe its approach. "High Executor," the tactical officer reported, "the human vessel is requesting permission to dock." Vorath straightened his spine. "They wish to negotiate?" "Unknown. They have only requested docking permission." Vorath considered his options. He could refuse. He could order his ships to fire on the approaching vessel. But he knew that any hostile action would accomplish nothing except to demonstrate Valoran impotence once more. The humans had already proven that they could stop any attack without effort. "Grant permission," he said finally. "Let them come." The human transport docked with the flagship. Vorath gathered his senior officers and walked to the docking bay to meet whatever ambassador the humans had sent. He expected warriors. He expected angry demands. He expected the cold voice of conquerors. What he found instead was a single human woman in simple clothes. She was small and old, with white hair and deep lines on her face. She carried no weapons. She wore no armor. She looked like someone's grandmother. "High Executor Vorath," she said in a quiet voice. "My name is Maria Santos. I was Ambassador Vasquez's teacher and mentor. I have come to speak with you." Vorath towered over her. His guards could have killed her with a thought, but somehow, standing before this tiny human woman, he felt small. "You have come to deliver demands?" he asked. "No, I have come to show you something. Will you come with me?" Vorath hesitated. This could be a trap, but what purpose would it serve? The humans could destroy his entire fleet whenever they wished. They did not need tricks. "Very well," he said. "Lead the way." Maria led him back to the transport ship. His guards tried to follow, but she stopped them with a raised hand. "Only you, High Executor. What I have to show you is for your eyes alone." Vorath dismissed his guards with a gesture. He was a Valoran. He would not show fear before a human elder. He followed Maria into the transport and watched the airlock seal behind him. The ship did not take them to a human vessel or a military installation. Instead, it traveled through human space until it reached a small station orbiting a blue and green world. Earth. This was the human homeworld. Vorath was looking at the planet his fleet had been sent to destroy. "This is where Elena grew up," Maria said quietly. "She was born in a small town by the sea. She used to tell me about watching the waves as a child and wondering what was beyond the horizon. That wonder never left her. It drove her to the stars." The transport docked with the orbital station. Maria led Vorath through clean corridors to a viewing room where a large screen dominated one wall. There were other humans in the room, dozens of them. They looked at Vorath with expressions he could not read. Some seemed angry, some seemed sad. Some seemed simply curious about the being who had ordered their ambassador's death. "Before we discuss the future," Maria said, "you need to understand who you killed. Please watch." The screen came to life. It showed a recording of Elena Vasquez, not the formal ambassador who had stood before the Concorde. The real Elena, the human behind the title. The recording showed her as a young woman, teaching children in a classroom. It showed her traveling to disaster zones to coordinate relief efforts. It showed her mediating disputes between nations and corporations, always seeking peaceful solutions. It showed her private moments, laughing with friends, playing with her grandchildren, sitting alone by the ocean, watching the waves. But it was her words that struck Vorath most deeply. I believe that every species can be better, Elena's recorded voice said. She was speaking to a room of young diplomats. I have seen humanity at its worst, war, genocide, environmental destruction, but I have also seen humanity at its best, compassion, sacrifice, the willingness to extend a hand to former enemies. If we can change, then any species can change. That is why I became a diplomat, not to protect humanity from the galaxy, but to help the galaxy become what it could be. The recording showed Elena preparing for her mission to the Concord. She was excited, hopeful. She genuinely believed that she could build bridges between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. She spent months learning customs and languages. She carefully selected gifts that would demonstrate humanity's goodwill. She wrote personal letters to the leaders of every major species, introducing herself and expressing her desire for friendship. She knew the risks, Maria said quietly. She knew that some species might react badly to human contact, but she believed the chance for peace was worth any personal danger. She asked me before she left what she should do if something went wrong. I told her to trust her instincts, to remain true to her values no matter what happened. The final recording showed Elena in the last moments before the execution. Her face showed fear, but also something else: acceptance, grace. Her last words echoed through the room. Tell my people that I came here in peace. Tell them not to answer hatred with hatred. Tell them to be better than this. The screen went dark. The room was silent. Vorath stood frozen. He had ordered the death of countless beings throughout his long career. He had destroyed worlds and exterminated species. He had always believed that power was the only thing that mattered, that compassion was weakness, that mercy was foolishness. But looking at Elena's face in those final moments, he felt something crack inside him. She had not cursed him. She had not threatened revenge. With her dying breath, she had asked her people to be better than their enemies. And they had listened. The humans had the power to destroy the Valoran. They had weapons that could dim stars and fold space. They could have wiped out his entire species in the time it took to blink. But instead, they had waited. They had mourned. They had captured his fleet without killing a single soldier, because a dying woman had asked them to be better. Do you understand now? Maria asked. Do you understand what you took from the galaxy? Elena was not just an ambassador. She was the best of us. She was proof that humanity could rise above its violent past. And you killed her because she looked you in the eyes. Vorath's voice was rough. What do you want from me? We want you to choose, Maria said. Humanity has debated for 3 months about what to do with the Valoran. Some want revenge. Some want to simply leave and let the galaxy sort out its own problems. But most of us remember Elena's last words. We remember that she asked us to be better. She turned to face him directly. So we offer you a choice, High Executor. You can face our judgment or you can face our mercy. The judgment will be swift and terrible. The mercy will be harder. Harder? How can mercy be harder than judgment? Because judgment ends with death. Mercy ends with change. Judgment allows you to remain who you are until the final moment. Mercy requires you to become something new. Vorath thought about his fleet trapped between human ships. He thought about his people scattered across 1,000 worlds. He thought about the proud valor and history of conquest and domination. And he thought about a small human woman who had faced death with words of peace on her lips. What does mercy look like? He asked. It looks like accountability without extinction. It looks like losing your power while keeping your lives. It looks like spending the rest of your days learning what Elena tried to teach you. That cooperation is stronger than competition. That compassion is more powerful than cruelty. That the only way forward is together. Vorath closed his silver eyes. He was the High Executor of the Valoran. He had never bowed before any being. He had never admitted error or weakness. Every instinct told him to choose judgment, to die as a Valoran warrior rather than live as a changed being. But Elena's face lingered in his mind. Her last words echoed in his ears. Tell them to be better than this. He opened his eyes and looked at Maria Santos. We choose mercy, he said quietly. Show us how to be better. Maria nodded. Her old face showed no triumph, only sadness, and perhaps the smallest spark of hope. Then let us begin. 20 years had passed since the execution of Ambassador Elena Vasquez. 20 years since the darkness spread across the galaxy. 20 years since humanity revealed its hidden power and offered mercy to those who had wronged them. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Valoran Empire was no more. Humanity had dismantled their military completely. Every warship was decommissioned. Every weapon was destroyed. Every military base was converted to civilian use. The proud warriors who had once conquered dozens of species found themselves without the tools of conquest. But humanity did not stop there. Human ships arrived at every Valoran world carrying the gifts that Elena Vasquez had tried to deliver. Medical cures that eliminated diseases the Valoran had suffered from for generations. Agricultural technology that turned barren worlds into gardens. Energy systems that ended poverty and scarcity. The humans gave everything freely, asking nothing in return. At first, the Valoran refused these gifts. They saw them as insults, charity offered by conquerors to the conquered. Many Valoran leaders urged their people to reject everything human and preserve their pride. But pride could not cure sick children. Pride could not feed hungry families. Pride could not rebuild the shattered economy of a former military empire. Slowly, reluctantly, the Valoran began to accept what humanity offered. The healing began. Human teachers came to Valoran schools. They did not teach Valoran children to hate themselves or their history. Instead, they taught them to understand why their ancestors had chosen conquest. They taught them to recognize the fear and insecurity that drove aggression, and they taught them that there were other ways to be strong. Human doctors came to Valoran hospitals. They brought cures and treatments that Valoran medicine had never achieved. They saved lives that would have been lost. And they asked only that the Valoran doctors learn these techniques so they could help their own people. Human engineers came to Valoran factories and farms. They shared technology that the Valoran could have developed eventually on their own, but would have taken centuries to achieve. They showed the Valoran how to build rather than destroy. And through it all, the humans kept Elena Vasquez's memory alive. Her image appeared in schools and hospitals and public spaces. Her words were quoted in speeches and ceremonies. She became a symbol of what humanity wanted the galaxy to become. Not all Valoran accepted this transformation. Some clung to their old ways and dreamed of revenge. Some fled to the outer edges of the galaxy and formed small groups dedicated to restoring Valoran glory. But as years passed and new generations grew up in a changed world, these resistors became fewer and fewer. The other species of the Concord watched this transformation with amazement. They had expected humanity to destroy the Valoran. They had expected occupation and exploitation. Instead, they saw something unprecedented, a victorious species investing enormous resources in helping a defeated enemy become better. One by one, the other species began approaching humanity with requests for the same help. The Krethian asked for agricultural assistance. The Orvani asked for medical knowledge. The Malaxi asked for clean energy technology. Humanity gave to all of them, just as they had given to the Valoran. The Galactic Concord reformed around new principles. Instead of domination by the strongest species, the new Concord was built on cooperation and mutual aid. Humans served as advisors and mediators, but they refused to take political power. They had not come to rule the galaxy. They had come to help it grow. High Executor Vorath lived to see most of these changes. The title of High Executor was abolished along with the rest of the Valoran military structure. Vorath became simply Vorath, a citizen like any other. He spent his remaining years traveling among his own people, teaching them what he had learned from humanity. I spent my life believing that strength meant the power to destroy, he would say to young Valoran who gathered to hear him speak. But I met a species that showed me a different kind of strength. The strength to build, the strength to heal, the strength to offer mercy when revenge would have been easy. He always ended these talks with the same story. The story of a small human woman who faced execution without hatred. The story of her last words asking her people to be better. The story of how those words saved the Valoran from destruction. Vorath died peacefully at the age of 307. Human doctors had extended his life by decades through their treatments. He spent his last days in a garden on his homeworld, surrounded by flowers that human botanists had helped restore from extinction. His final words were a quotation from Elena Vasquez. "The only way forward is together." In the 21st year after Elena's death, the reformed Galactic Concord voted to build a memorial in her honor. The memorial would stand in the exact spot where she had been executed. It would be built by Valoran hands according to human designs, and it would carry an inscription written by the descendants of those who had watched her die. The dedication ceremony drew beings from every corner of the galaxy. Millions watched as the memorial was unveiled. It showed Elena Vasquez standing tall with her arms open wide in a gesture of welcome. Her face was serene and hopeful. She looked exactly as she had in the recordings that Maria Santos had shown to Vorath 2 decades earlier. A young Valoran named Asara was chosen to read the inscription. She was 17 years old. She had grown up in the new galaxy that humanity had helped create. She had learned about the old ways of her people only through history lessons. The idea that Valoran had once conquered and killed for pride was almost impossible for her to understand. She approached the memorial and read the words carved into its base. Elena Vasquez came to us in peace. She brought gifts and friendship and hope. We answered with violence. We killed her for the crime of looking us in the eyes. Her people could have destroyed us. They could have erased our species from existence. Instead, they remembered her last words. Instead, they chose mercy. This memorial stands as our promise to honor that mercy. We will become the species she believed we could be. We will build rather than destroy. We will heal rather than harm. We will extend our hands in friendship to all beings, as she extended her hand to us. She came in peace. We answered with violence. Her people answered with grace. May we become worthy of her faith. The ceremony ended in silence. Beings from 300 species stood together under the stars and remembered a woman who had died believing that the galaxy could be better. And they looked around at what the galaxy had become and knew that she had been right. That night, Maria Santos stood alone before the memorial. She was very old now, older than any human had ever lived before. Human medicine could extend life, but it could not do so forever. This would be her last visit to the conquered station. "Hello, Elena," she said softly. "I hope you can see what your death accomplished. I hope you know that your last words saved more lives than any military victory ever could. I hope you understand that you did not die in vain." She touched the cold stone of the memorial and smiled. "You always believed that any species could be better. You were right. The Valoran have changed. The galaxy has changed. And humanity has changed too. We discovered that we were capable of mercy we never knew we had." A young Valoran approached her. Tassara, the one who had read the inscription. She hesitated before speaking. "Honored Elder, may I ask you something?" Maria nodded. Did she really believe it? Did Ambassador Vasquez really believe that the Valoran could change, even after we killed her? Maria looked at the young Valoran and saw in her eyes the proof of everything Elena had fought for. A Valoran who asked questions instead of giving orders. A Valoran who sought understanding instead of domination. A Valoran who would never dream of executing an ambassador for looking her in the eyes. "Yes," Maria said. She really believed it. And she was right. Above them, the stars shone brightly. The darkness that had covered the galaxy for 20 years was gone. Human ships still patrolled the space lanes, but now they traveled alongside ships from every species. They were not conquerors, they were guardians, builders, teachers, friends. The sky had gone dark when Elena Vasquez died. It brightened again because her people chose to honor her memory. They proved that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or military power. It was the ability to turn grief into grace, to answer hatred with hope, to offer mercy when revenge would have been easy. Elena Vasquez came to the galaxy bearing gifts. She was murdered for her kindness. But her death planted a seed that grew into something beautiful. A galaxy united not by fear, but by cooperation. A galaxy where former enemies worked together to build a better future. A galaxy that finally understood what Elena had tried to teach them. The only way forward is together. And together, they move forward into the light.